Okay, going live. You're live. I was going to wear the Harry Potter looking rugby shirt, but now I can't find it, and it's a little warm for rugby shirts with long sleeves. Anyway, so this is preppy enough, right? Okay, it screams college without saying college. I hope. And I just realized I forgot to load a thumbnail here, so I don't know when I'll be able to correct that. Maybe soon. Without much ado, I was watching another video, just finished actually, and okay, so my thumbnail is missing from here for some reason. Why is my thumbnail missing from here? Should be right there. Not cool. So, okay, this is a little awkward. Sorry. I should almost do a retake or something. Will it save here now? I would like to have a thumbnail. I have an alternate I can put in. Anyway, so I was just watching. Oh, no, there it goes. Yay! I was just watching this video, and apparently a lot of things about. Sorry for that delay, but if you're that bored, you would have skipped ahead half a minute anyway. It sounds like dorm rooms haven't really changed in the last 30 plus years anyway, so there's not been a lot of. So I'll read my comments from that first before I launch into other things. So in their comments, they were complaining that people were bringing up their old memories from 20 years ago or whatever, as if they're completely irrelevant now. Sure. If they're not accepted comments for your video, I will gladly add my comments anyway. Because personally, I got very adept at helping others move their furniture in 2 years. Keep in mind, I was not a freshman dorm habituant or whatever. I moved as a transfer student from junior college. So when I was in the dorms, I was already older and able to lift things, I guess. I didn't always agree with their layout choice, and I would offer suggestions that they could accept or ignore. The first day at orientation or whatever, the woman asked if anyone has any questions, and one guy stood up and said, "I need someone to help me move my furniture." And so I volunteered, and after that, I became kind of known as a guy who would help you move your furniture. So I ended up doing that several times. So that's why I consider myself a partial expert on this subject, even if younger people's videos, they seem to think that that's irrelevant. Good luck with that then, because the maintenance guy don't care. He ain't showing up to help you move your furniture most of the time, probably. And some of this will be about stuff that I found discarded late at night. The people would put stuff out in the hallway and expect the maintenance guy to just deal with it in the morning, and that kind of stuff they usually would, but they wouldn't typically go into your room and help you unless something was like literally broken. The maids we had, your dorm may be different, but the maids we had were only common area, mostly restroom cleaning. They didn't clean the restrooms in the weekends, so the restrooms were completely disgusting in the weekends. But that's not dorm room specific, that kind of thing. Yes, so as an older student, I refused to have a roommate because I didn't want to be paired with an 18-year-old who had never cleaned his own laundry or whatever before. So I had a smidge more space than a typical dorm room. And I was lucky in that I usually got corner rooms that tended to be a little bigger, so I had a little bit more space, but I didn't have typically a lot of visitors either. because the younger people had more draw to their tiny little crap rooms than I did to my nice big room. That was fine with me most of the time. That was the whole reason I got the room by myself kind of in the first place. But I did acquire some stray furniture left in, like I said, in the halls at night. I saw some things for extra storage, and I'll talk about that in a minute. The layouts of the two rooms that I did. I had a really nice room set up more so the second year. First year, I barely moved the furniture much and had brought less clothes and stuff. I had only brought like 20 CDs. I had a CD tower. In those days, you didn't stream music. You had to buy music. And this is actually, might as well get it out of the way. I think this was the compact disc boombox tape player that I had. The lid broke off because the CD player hasn't worked in years, and the tape deck doesn't work anymore. The radio still works, even though the antenna broke. And the little Irish puffy leprechaun sticker is still there, and the Tasmanian devil sticker. Nope, I don't read much. Hurts my brain. There was something else stuck on the front here. I don't know what it was. Probably a school mascot or something. Anyway, so this was the size of the radio that I had the first year, and then now it's gone all fuzzy. I hate when it does. Okay, there we go. So the second year around Thanksgiving, I replaced this with a 5 CD changer and took this home. It mostly stayed in the garage for years and years and years. But the radio still works. And this was not my actual phone. This was a later model that I took from work. But to give you an idea of the kind of phones that were around, it wasn't a self-contained thing that also had a computer and a stereo and a video camera and the first year I did not bother having a phone. There was a pay phone down the hall, and I mostly used that once a week to call home. And all the students would eavesdrop on my conversations as if they were going to hear something juicy. I would call friends once in a while and, maybe talk for an hour or less, because I was using quarters. Or I could get them to call the number back if their, parents weren't willing to suck up a bill, because in those days it was a long distance charge to call LA from anywhere else. But if you called after a certain hour, the rates went down or whatever, and you could chat for $2 or whatever it was. But yeah, I didn't have that much. My wardrobe was mostly t-shirts and a couple pairs of jeans and a couple pairs of camo pants and a Levi's jacket with the fur in it. And I didn't even buy that. That was like my sister's ex-boyfriend's jacket that he left at my house. So I was like, oh, there's my new jacket. Okay. And I had like 2 pairs of Converse shoes and a pair of cowboy boots or something. So the second year, the night watchman, I'll talk about this more when I show the layout. The security guy, he was very impressed. He more or less complimented me that mine was the cleanest dorm room he'd ever seen in his career, at least up until that point. But maybe someone else has been more lucky since. I don't know. He had been in plenty rooms in 15 years or whatever already, but I still managed to win. That year, as I'll explain, I kept the dressers against one wall, and I still had the window open for a full view. In the other video, she was talking about maybe putting stuff around the window, but I don't think she meant cover the window per se. Some people with their layouts might have done that. We had windows that would open, but we did not have fire escape windows. So if you were not on the first floor, you were not getting out through that window. So that also is something that I forgot to mention in this comment, but whatever. My room the year before had been pretty sparse and maybe even cleaner actually than the one he saw. But I got no medals or trophies awarded from the staff or whatever. The cleanest room, that didn't happen. Or neatest setup, or however you want to phrase it. Spartan existence. They had fixed the cinder block wall problem slightly before I got there with some drywall panels. I think sometime in the 80s they'd already actually done that. Might have been the early 90s ish for some of them. Some of them have not been retrofitted or whatever you want to call it. Again, every college is going to be different. The one that I knew of, my friend had gone there before I did, and he told me about the complaints. But then when I got there, it had been fixed. Like, so whenever they did that, in between like him whining and me not whining. But I think I still ended up covering the drywall on one side and not getting to use it and having a bare wall above my desk or something. There was still some crap that second year that I still didn't have a ton of decoration. The first year, I made a tall mural on paper with crayons, and I used masking tape and stuck it to the cinder blocks just fine, and it stayed up all year. The next year, I covered, like, I'm pretty sure I covered one whole wall with furniture, but I don't remember if it was the drywall side or the cinder blocks. But I know I had some posters up on the one wall between my desk and my bed, because I know I took them down and gifted them to my buddy for his senior year, and then he gifted them to his next bros when they became seniors, and he told me I would be proud that they went to the right guys, you know. And one of them was the Animal House Bluto poster, and some other ones, Robert De Niro or something. I don't remember exactly all. It was not a lot, but there was definitely wall art. Okay, so anyway, the things that I do remember, I made a list. She's mentioned a rug. We had flat carpet, so we didn't have to worry about our feet being cold, but the carpet was typically considered disgusting. I vacuumed it a few times. One guy, or was it a gal? I forget. Somebody told me that they put tape on their hand. I think it was my buddy, different buddy. He wrapped tape backwards on his hand, and he crawled the whole entire square inch of the floor to get up whatever he thought was going to still be there. And he said that took him like 2 hours to feel like he got up all the, pet hair or leftover dust or whatever. I don't think went that far, but I had a lot of my floor space covered again with the furniture. I don't recall us having any blinds or curtains kind of thing at all. Maybe there was curtains and I'm remembering it wrong, but I really don't remember the windows being covered at all. I think if you were on the ground floor, that might have been, more essential than any other floor. So perhaps the ground floor had curtains, and maybe I had curtains and I just kept them open the whole time because nobody was looking in. I was on the third floor one year and the fourth floor the next year, and I remember the windows being very reflective and not being able to remember whose room was whose from the quad, and kind of trying to remember, oh, it's the third one where the noise is coming from, so that's those chicks, not my friends, kind of thing. So you could figure out where the party was, maybe. That kind of thing. A lot of the gals, instead of posters, were more into tapestries, kind of billowy, Renaissance-y art kind of things. Christmas lights. I didn't have Christmas lights, but that had become popular for sure. Candles were not supposed to be allowed. Incense was still burned. I cannot absolutely stand the smell of incense, but that was a thing. We did not have any inset closets. I remember, though, I think that some of the dressers had only drawers, and some of them were a wardrobe with like an opening, almost like a TV cabinet, but with a coat hanger rod. And I know I had one of those both years, but I can't remember when I got the second one, the second year. If I already had it in my room and I added it. I know I added one dresser after Christmas, and I don't remember if it was the wardrobe or the shelves, drawers, whatever. But I think that some of those with the swinging doors had a mirror on the inside of that. I think that's where I had my mirror both years, was because there was nothing on the room door. I don't think there was a mirror on the room door. I could be remembering that wrong. But the bathroom was always right across the hall from my room anyway, so it was literally like 8 feet to a mirror. So it wasn't that big of a deal. Lofted beds, I think, were a preference for a lot of people. We didn't have lofted beds. Some of the beds were lofted and some of them were not. There was 2 guys I remember, they had a captain bed. They had a rare with the drawers underneath, and I was able to swap for that one year maybe. I think I remember having a captain drawer the first year. The second year I know I had my hockey equipment under the bed, so because everybody would complain that it stank like hockey equipment. And I took it home at Christmas or whatever, or I swapped some of it out because I know I had brought extra and then I didn't end up getting to use it, but I was still going out at night in my skates. After most of the people were gone to bed, I would go out and skate for like an hour or 2 in the parking lot and whatnot. Tennis courts. But so yeah, these 2 guys, they had taken their dressers and put them so the shelves faced out, the drawers faced out, so you could still access the drawers. And then we put the bed on top of one of them because I had helped them lift this whole bed and put the thing, and that made them a bunch of space underneath. But you couldn't do it with the stilt beds because then it'd be way too high and you had no ladder, so they couldn't really do as much as they wanted. But I remember one guy, one time, he had some bed that was way up by the ceiling, and his roommate was the one who had abandoned the single and moved in with him that gave me the single. So I was all glad that he did that. Because he decided at the last minute he would accept a roommate, and they got along fine and blah, blah, blah. They played music together and all that crap. And I had helped them move their furniture, but I don't think that was the same one with the dressers. I think it was a different room. But somehow I remember, yeah, Josh having this bed that was just way up near the ceiling or something. We had stacked it somehow, and I think that was one of the ones that I helped with. So anyway, so in these photos, one of the things, yeah, I don't remember if I had a desk light or a lamp. I never, like I said, I didn't have any nightmare roommates, but I heard plenty of great stories, usually from the females more than the males, but sometimes the guys wouldn't get along. But usually when that was the case, it was a guy who left the college entirely. Either he moved to a different dorm or he went to a different university. Like it was usually somebody I knew for about a month and a half, and then he was gone, and that was that. So I knew one guy, he had his drum set. He had bought electronic drums so he could play it with his headphones, and he had pushed the bed up against the wall or dismantled it or whatever, and he would just put the mattress down at night and sleep on the mattress on the floor so he could have his drum set up the whole time. And then, yeah, when he needed to move around the room or do his exercises or whatever, he just put the mattress. But I never helped him with furniture. I just went to his room and was like, okay, where do we sit? You know. Food and storage was always a thing. You weren't supposed to have much food in your room. I usually kept some food in the microwave. Like if I took a burger from the dining hall or whatever, it would keep overnight without me worrying about refrigerating, and then I'd nuke it for a minute and eat it in the morning for breakfast, and it would be fine. But one year, the second year, I had chocolates that I got for Christmas, the Sigh candies, and I had left them in the wardrobe and the ants had somehow smelled it out and came from God knows where in the building somewhere and had found my chocolates and got all in the chocolates. So I had to throw away the entire, well, I could have eaten it with the ants, I guess, if I felt like it, but they were just everywhere, and I had to get the maintenance to come and spray, and threw away a whole box of brand new chocolates. So that was fun. But like I said, the 2 a.m. furniture move with no help. Yeah, there's always some girl looking out her door and thinks you're weird, and why are you moving this? It's like, hey, I want it. It's mine now. They didn't want it. I want it. Free dresser for me. And it solved the rest of my storage problems for that year. Except, like I said, I still had no real where to put the hockey stuff. It still had to kind of stay under the bed. So the first year, this will all be backwards perhaps. No, it looks okay. So we've got the window, the quad. There's a room kitty corner here, but there was some kind of utility space or something. So I wasn't directly next to that neighbor. So I only had a neighbor on this side. Sorry, I have to look at this. Okay, so the door to my rooms was in the same spot both times, even though I was not on the same floor and in the same hall both times. Half of the rooms were quad side, and then half roughly were like parking lot side or whatever. I thought the parking lot side would be worse, but it turns out the quad was actually noisier in the evening because the cars would mostly be parked. And, you know, when you're trying to like relax and sleep and stuff, there was actually less noise on the parking lot side than the guys playing guitars and frisbee and hitting on chicks or whatever in the quad. So that was actually a mistake the first year, but it was the only room I could get because, again, what's his name moved in with Josh. And so that solved that problem for me. So both times I had the door in the same spot and I had the trash can in the same spot. I recall this wall being wrong wall. Okay, this wall being empty here. I don't remember. I thought I had the mural here, but maybe the mural was here anyway. But this was definitely a wardrobe dresser. I had rearranged the furniture only slightly. I think that they originally had the bed going along the window, and then I pivoted it so that there was this gap. And I think I had like a little nightstand here, maybe, that I didn't include in here. I believe I must have had a something there, but I know I had my clock, my typewriter, and my radio. Again, this one on the desk. Pretty sure, but I did have a clock radio, and then the CD tower. I didn't put that in here. Oops. Like I said, I only had like 20 CDs, and it was in a little tower that fit right there between the door and the desk. So that was convenient for that. And the nightstand may have actually been where I had this radio, since I had the clock radio. But you can see it doesn't take up a ton of space. So that was maybe on the nightstand by the bed. I don't have any like good accurate photos because we didn't film everything in those days. And then of course the chair with enough space to get to the bed, and then a nice big open area here. But I only had like congregation like 2 or 3 times because, again, everybody wanted to go to more hip rooms that had better stereos and musical instruments and blah, blah, blah. And I had no TV. I had no phone. Like I said, I did the pay phone. So, and I had the microwave, and I don't remember where the microwave was, but I'm pretty sure I had a little, might have been here, or it might have been on the desk even, for all I know. It might have been something that I like moved a little bit when I had to like type a paper. I could move things around or something. I don't think I had a fridge at least the first half of the year. I think I got a fridge at the discount when I got my phone. I think I added it, and so the fridge was probably here in this space. And I probably put the microwave on top of that, something like that. But I remember I only had one dresser thing. I might have had a captain's bed with the pull drawers. Like I said, I seem to remember something like that where I had storage and I had nothing on the floor. I know the floor was totally empty pretty much the whole time. So year 2, though, when I got a chance to pick the room in the lottery in advance. So I knew exactly what room I was getting. I knew exactly what side of the building I was going to be on. I knew exactly where the bathroom and the stairwell was and all that. And I only had one neighbor again on one side. So again, I had the neighbor on this side, and this side was the trash chute and the stairwell, and then the bathroom was right here. And Jessica and oops, everything's backwards on this. There we go. Okay. Jessica and Adriana were kitty corner from me, but on the other side of the doors. So they weren't right next to me. Same as the year before. I had Camille and first her roommate graduated, and then Sarah took over as her roommate. But then Sarah said she couldn't stand living with Camille or something, or got a free room for a couple months all to herself. Somehow she finagled it. But I think like toward the end of the year, they finally made her take a roommate. And so her and Camille, because these were supposed to be the common spaces and they had turned them into quad rooms for females. I don't think any guys were in the quad rooms. I think it was all girls. But Camille and her roommate somehow had finagled it. Since it was a smaller common space, there was only 2 of them instead of 3 or 4, like the middle common rooms. Whereas Jessica and Adriana were in a quad room. I don't remember the names of the other 2 girls. But I knew all 4 or 3 of the 4 of them or whatever. So the year before, somehow Camille had ended up in this giant, what was supposed to be a common area room all to herself. And Sarah was in a regular dorm room that was huge once Maria left. And so they forced her to let Camille live with her or something so that we could have a common space. And finally, and neither of them was being princess of the university with their giant room all to themselves. So anyway, back to the room itself. So yeah, trash. So the Bluto poster was somewhere around here. My desk here. I moved my bed this time so I could lie in bed and watch the TV. The TV was here. Now this is after Christmas. Before Christmas, I had one less dresser drawer. And I don't, like I said, I don't remember if it was the swinging wardrobe or the second one of shelves that I got. But I replaced the stereo for the boombox, like I said, around Thanksgiving. And then I added the 3rd dresser somewhere around January. And so the door is still here. The refrigerator was there. I remember the refrigerator being by the door. I think the microwave was here. The TV, I did not have a separate DVD player. And I had a VCR at home, but I think I got one of the TVs where you could put the video cassette in the bottom of the thing, but it didn't have a DVD player, but it did have a VHS. So that came in handy. Back in those days, VHS was still a thing. Outside this here was the garbage dumpster. And then here was the service driveway. So there was always vehicles going back and forth to the cafeteria and the garbage trucks and stuff. So I would hear more noise at 5 a.m. here, and that kind of thing could wake you up once in a while. But overall, it was quiet on this side. No quad, no noise, mostly peaceful. And so yeah, I had this just line of storage, and then a mostly open area here, and that worked out pretty well. And I didn't have a lot of visitors again, but I had more than enough space for foot traffic. There were, the stairwell. I forget if the trash chute was right there and then the stairwell was farther, because I think the stairwell was more across from, gone blurry again, Jessica and what's her name's room was by the stairwell. Okay, so anyway, so like I said, I'm just rambling now and trying to get this thing to stop being blurry. But basically, I agree with the overall theme of the other video that, the more open space you can try to have, the better. And the more non-parallel bed dorm room layouts you can achieve, kind of better. But some of the ones that were shown in the other video that I didn't really comment on, like they were putting the desk a little too close to there it goes, a little too close to the door for walkthrough. So you're going to be constantly interrupting the person who's studying at that desk. if you're too close to the door. Other than that, because she said you could put a desk or a dresser there, and I would say the dresser would be the more optimal, because then once you get past that dresser, it's like, yeah, it's a little cramped at first. Once you get past that dresser, you have all that flow. Whereas if you put the desk, yeah, you might not always be sitting at that desk, but if that person is the study person and the other person is the party person, you're really going to want to figure that situation out, because the study person does not want to be interrupted constantly by the party person. But again, I didn't have roommates, so I don't have a ton of tips for how to deal with all of that, apart from get away from them was the common. Like I said, I can't wait to dump my toxic roommate. She is absolutely horrible. She brought 8 million pounds of clothes because she thinks it's a fashion show and her parents are rich and they let her do whatever she wants and blah, 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 blah. Yep. And so yeah, I think the microwave was there, something like that. Or the microwave might have still been on top of the fridge. It was a small microwave. Oh, the other thing I had, you weren't supposed to have this. This is not the same model, it's the wrong box, but the one inside is the correct one. These were technically not allowed either, but I think I got one of these around Thanksgiving when I got that stereo. And so this was, one gal had one and she used it for making tea. I didn't drink tea. I used it for making hot chocolate mostly. And I could warm a bottle of sake because that was a drink that wasn't expensive, but not wino quality. So once in a while. And so, yeah, just a little, but otherwise I didn't have any, I didn't have any candles or any of that nonsense. This was, you weren't allowed to have a hot plate. That was one rule. I didn't violate, and I don't remember. I might have had a toaster. I don't think you were supposed to have a toaster, but I might have had a toaster. Even though, because the dining hall wasn't always convenient, and I liked having peanut butter toast more than peanut butter bread. And peanut butter was one of the few foods I actually had room for in my room. So if I was really hungry in the middle of the night, I could always have a little bit of peanut butter and a little bit of toast. I think that was my, and some hot chocolate. I think that was my one violation. Yeah, was this, and I might have had a toaster. And the microwave was allowed. My microwave was pretty small. Wasn't a full kitchen range. It was more of a sandwich. Like I said, most of the time all I was heating up was a slice of pizza or a burger. You weren't supposed to take any food home from the dining hall, but every night I always took home a plate of usually one entree and usually some cookies. It was like, no, I'm taking this. Like, shut up, leave me alone. I'm not going to be hungry at 1 o'clock in the morning just because you're worried about ants in the room, which, as it turns out, that none of that ever brought ants into the room. The only thing that ever brought the ants into the room was, in fact, the chocolate that was not forbidden dining hall food in the first place. It was just a totally random. That was the only time I ever saw any ants. It was the one time I had chocolate, or that much chocolate, I guess. So, okay, I always say, if you have any questions, put them in the comments. I don't know who is going to want to, decorate based on my, 3 posters and a nightstand, life or whatever. But certainly, conversation we can have in more detail. That sort of thing. So yeah, I guess I'll shut up now and see how it goes. Another one of those videos I make for myself, because hardly anybody watches these decor videos anymore.